Today, I have Sarah Rusbatch with me, a gray area drinking coach, menopause coach, and best-selling author of Beyond Booze: How to Create a Life You Love Alcohol Free. She's helped thousands of women ditch alcohol and reclaim their confidence, health, and purpose in midlife. Sarah is also a sought-after speaker and media contributor known for her honest, empowering approach to living alcohol free. Thank you so much for being here, Sarah.
Thanks so much for having me.
I am very excited to have this conversation. I think it's an uncomfortable one, but it's an important one.
Yeah, that's what a lot of podcast hosts say to me. They're kind of like, okay, I'm hanging on for dear life coming into this conversation, and I'm really worried about what's going to come up, but I'm here for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm used to having uncomfortable conversations. I want to always be educating women and empowering them to make better choices, especially when it comes to their health and midlife health, which you and I both know is no picnic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this topic is also near and dear to my heart. I grew up with an alcoholic parent, so I know the damage that alcohol can do, not just to your health, but to your family and your life. And I personally started to notice a bit of a reliance on alcohol, probably in my, I would say, late 20s, early 30s. I would use it to calm my nerves, especially in social settings, or just deal with stress, right? Which is what most people do. But then when I hit my perimenopausal years in my, I would say, mid to late 30s, I just noticed I wasn't handling it very well. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to continue to add fuel to the fire. So I pretty much decided to stop drinking. I may have a glass or something once in a blue moon, probably like a couple times a year. But that's kind of where I am right now. So I know that part of your story is you quit booze back in 2019. So can you share what led you to make that decision and what led you to help other women do the same?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking. So I grew up in the north of England. I live in Australia now, but I grew up in the north of England where alcohol was very present as a teenage rite of passage. And even prior to that, I think when I think about what was modeled to me as a little girl, it was alcohol is what adults do to have fun. So that association got created for me at a very young age. My parents were very social. There was always dinner parties. There were always quite pissed. Well, I say pissed, you say drunk.
Yeah.
Like men and women in my house who were like nothing sinister whatsoever. They were all having a
Mhm.
great time, lots of laughter, lots of fun. But as a little girl, I am obviously in my subconscious brain created this connection. Adults drink alcohol to have fun. Parents drink alcohol to have fun. That's what you need to do to have fun as a grown up. I started drinking quite young at the age of 14, and it was kind of this rite of passage where kids would take whatever they could find from their parents' drinks cabinet, go down the local park, mix it all together, drink it, maybe throw up in the bushes, go home, and do it all again the following weekend. And what happened for me at quite a young age was a few things. So there's alcoholism in my family. So my brain perhaps was wired a little bit more towards developing that relationship with alcohol. I got really lit up by alcohol. So some people will drink alcohol and they, like a couple of my friends, they have a couple of glasses and they're like, oh, ready for a cup of tea now. That was never me. I was like,
Wow.
oh my God, I am just getting started. Like
Wow.
alcohol lit my brain up. It made me come alive. I felt great when I drank. It
Mm.
created for me a sense of belonging, a sense of connection. You know, when you're drunk and someone's like, you're my best friend. Like
Yeah.
that was what I wanted. I moved house and school a lot as a child. And so I was always the new girl trying to fit in. And this felt like a great way to connect and to fit in. And I also experienced a couple of little T traumas during my teenage years that I didn't know how to process, that I didn't share with anyone, and that as a teenage girl, we're looking back in the 90s, the early 90s, there wasn't much out there about emotional regulation. There wasn't much out there about, oh, if you're feeling uncomfortable and that emotion is sitting in your body, these are some great skills for this. And alcohol was a bloody great tool to make me not feel the way that I felt about some of these experiences. So that was all melted together in a big pot that basically created on the outside Sarah the party girl, Sarah the one that was great fun. It was always my house that everyone came back to after the party. It was my house that always had wine chilling in the fridge on a Sunday afternoon if a girlfriend popped over. Like the association became Sarah was a big drinker, and I
Wow.
perpetuated that story because I loved alcohol. It was a form of connection. It was a form of numbing. It was a form of, I loved the hedonism that came with it. I loved
Mhm.
that I would go out at night and I wouldn't know where the night would take me. And I would end up in these crazy parties in London, in warehouses that, you'd get home at 6 a.m. And I thought that was me living my best life.
Yeah.
Looking back at it in my 20s, it kind of was. I was very much into
Right.
the dance scene, the rave scene. We were going to Ibiza for weekends.
Wow.
All of that was going on. And then what changed for me was when I got married and had kids.
Hmm.
Because a few things all happened at once that were quite big things, in that we moved to Australia. I had two kids under two, and I had no family here, no ready-made friendship group, and I left behind a very successful career. So my sense of identity had gone, my sense of connection had gone. I was in this new role as a mother with two kids under two, with a son who was incredibly demanding, a daughter that would like couldn't be put down, just needed to be with me all of the time. And I was homesick and I was sad and I was struggling with my identity because on paper I had everything I wanted. I lived by the beach in
Yeah.
Australia. I had a boy and a girl. They were healthy. I didn't have to
Mhm.
work because we'd saved enough money that my husband was working and I was home with the kids. So on paper, oh, I had it all. But inside, I was really struggling because I had had a very fulfilling career. And all of a sudden, I was going to monkey music, pureeing carrot, cleaning up sick, changing nappies.
Yeah.
And I felt really lost. And that was probably when my drinking changed from being something I did to socialize to something I did to end the day. It became that bookend of, 7 o'clock, right, the kids are in bed, I can have a glass of wine. And then it became, it's 5 o'clock, husband's home now, so I can have a glass of wine. And it was never on my own during the day, and all of those things, but it was definitely something that I would look forward to,
Hmm.
something that I would probably start thinking about early afternoon. Oh, look and make sure I've got some wine in the fridge for when Angus gets home from work. And something that I was becoming reliant on. It wasn't a physical dependency, but it was an emotional
Yes.
dependency because I didn't have the tools or the skills to recognize I'm dealing with some really big emotions here. These are really hard. I probably need to go and speak to someone. I didn't do any of that. I just numbed it all out with alcohol. And then on the outside, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Yeah.
There's nothing to see here. Life in Australia is wonderful. And inside, I just felt like a shell. And that was in my 30s. And then, slowly but surely, life in Australia settled down, made lots of friends, kids got into school, life goes on. I set up my own business. I was working from home, which didn't tick many boxes for me because I'm a people person. And so working
Yeah.
for yourself at home on your own all day when you are such a people person was actually soul destroying for me. But it
Mm.
worked really well because I had flexibility. I could take the kids to school. I could pick them up. I didn't have to worry about school holidays because we had no family here. And so
Mm.
it ticked lots of boxes apart from my soul. My soul inside felt like she was dying. And again, I numbed that with alcohol. And
Mm.
so my drinking looked like I don't drink Monday, Tuesday. Sometimes I drink on a Wednesday, sometimes I don't. I then would find reasons and justifications to drink Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It was never, rarely was it to the point of blackout. Most of the time it was just, a few drinks. But of course, my tolerance increased. So
Mhm.
my what started off as one or two glasses could easily become 3 or 4 glasses, and that was just a night at home, not really doing much. I didn't really feel hungover. I would get up, I would go to the gym, I would go to work, I would do all the things that you have to do, but I was just feeling more and more anxious. I was feeling more and more meh. Alcohol was impacting my sleep because I was going into perimenopause. I was waking up at 3 a.m. I was putting on weight. I had estrogen dominance. Like all of these things were going on. And I went to my doctor and I said to her, I'm a mess. I'm a shell of the person I used to be. I'm so anxious. I've never had anxiety all the time. I feel on edge. I'm ruminating about everything. I'm overthinking everything. And at no point, Claudia, did she say to me, how much are you drinking? And yet happily gave me a prescription for anti-anxiety meds and sent me on my
Yep.
way.
Hmm.
And at that time, I took a break from alcohol. There was something in me that said, I'm going to do 21 days off. I'm just going to take a break. Maybe I've been drinking too much. And took that break and kept going because I felt great. This was 2017. I got to 100 days and I was like,
Wow.
wow, like my anxiety's disappeared. The voices in my head are way more positive. I feel more
Mhm.
joyful. I've got more energy. I smashed all my targets at work. Kind of everything started to go really well. But then I was like, yeah, but I can't never drink again. That would just be really weird. I'm Sarah the party girl. So I went back to drinking, thinking, oh, I'm fixed now. I've just done 100 days. I'm clearly not an alcoholic. There's clearly not a problem here because I wouldn't have been able to just take 100 days off. So I went back to drinking, thinking I'll be able to just manage my drinking now. I'll be a grown-up drinker that just has a glass of red wine with a steak on a Sunday afternoon. And
Hmm.
surely, within a couple of weeks, I was back to drinking the same amount as before. Um, but I never forgot how I felt during that 100 days. And finally, in 2019, I just went, that's it, I'm done. I want that to be my life. I want the way that I felt for that 100 days. That's the best version of me that I've ever known. And I want her to be my day-to-day life. And so I quit for good in 2019. 2020, the pandemic hit. I
Mm.
retrained to become a health and well-being coach and a grey area drinking coach. 2021, I set up my business and I was interviewed by a women's lifestyle website. And the interview went out in the March. And I shared my story of grey area drinking, what my drinking was like, how my life had changed since I stopped drinking. And within 24 hours, 8,000 women had contacted me and said,
Wow.
you've just told my story.
Wow.
And since then, I've just been supporting thousands and thousands of women all over the world to change their relationship with alcohol and to get the benefits that so many of us get when we do that.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. That is some story, and it actually gives me a lot of hope to hear how many women reached out to you.
Yeah.
Um, because sometimes I could be a little pessimistic in terms of what I see out there and, how alcohol is so celebrated and encouraged, and anybody who doesn't drink are the weirdos, right? But you mentioned gray area drinking. So can you explain exactly what that is and how does somebody know if they fall into that category?
So a really helpful way for your listeners to picture it is a scale of 1 to 10.
Mm.
I would say you're a one. So a one is that person that maybe has a glass of champagne at a wedding once a year, but alcohol doesn't feature in their life. It's just not something that is part of their life. 10 is someone who has physical end stage dependency on alcohol, so needs to have medical support to safely withdraw from alcohol because alcohol is one of only three substances that the human body can die from withdrawal from. And
Mhm.
so you've got a 1 and a 10. A grey area drinker would sit between a 4 and an 8 on that scale. So, say they've passed the point of being a take it or leave it drinker. They have some kind of reliance on alcohol, whether it's emotional, whether it's their stress release, whether it's they've got an association that they can't have fun without it.
Mhm.
And, some of the signs that we're a grey area drinker, well, the first one would be, okay, if I said to you now, let's do 90 days off alcohol and come and do a 90-day challenge with me and let's see how you feel. If your first thought is, oh, I can't do that. I've got that holiday, I've got that wedding, I've got that birthday. What am I going to do on a Friday night? Then you've
Mhm.
probably got a reliance on alcohol in some way because a person who's a 1 or a 2 on that scale, they'd be like, yeah, don't mind, don't care. Yeah, I'll do 90 days if you want. Like
Mhm.
there is just that difference. Some of the
Mhm.
other signs would be you often drink more than you intend to. You
Mhm.
might take breaks from alcohol, but they don't last. You make rules around your drinking, but then you always find a reason to justify breaking those rules. So there's a lot of chatter in your mind that someone
Mhm.
who's not a grey area drinker, like you, there wouldn't be chatter or constant
Mhm.
negotiation. Or should I drink tonight? I said I wasn't going to drink tonight, but maybe I could have one tonight and then I won't have one tomorrow. And that was
Mhm.
like my life constantly was
Wow.
this loop in my mind justifying having a drink. But for grey area drinkers, we're high functioning. We haven't
Mhm.
lost our job. We haven't lost our home. We haven't lost our relationships. No one on the outside would be like, oh God, you've got a problem. And most grey area drinkers surround themselves with other grey area drinkers. And so
Mhm.
your point of reference is, well, I just drink like everybody does.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, we've normalized in society alcohol for women as being a form of self-care, a
Yep.
reward, and no one's talking about why that is absolutely awful because of the impact that it has on women's health.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
So on that note, let's talk about alcohol use disorder. That essentially is when somebody, like you mentioned, has a hard time cutting back or controlling their drinking, even if it's affecting their health, their relationships, their day-to-day life. But that surprisingly has increased over 80% in women specifically in the last 30 years. Why do you think that is?
Yeah. And alcohol use disorder, in terms of referencing that to grey area drinking, alcohol use disorder is defined as mild, moderate, or severe.
Okay.
And mild and moderate would be grey area drinking, and
Okay.
severe would be dependency. So, alcohol use disorder, Andrew Huberman on his podcast, he references it as being anything more than the recommended units of alcohol per week. I
Hmm.
don't like to put a number on it because I think it's more of that emotional reliance. If you found yourself in a situation where you are needing or relying on alcohol, when you've had an argument with your husband, when the kids are driving you nuts, whatever it is, then we're probably in that mild to moderate alcohol use disorder. So I think there's two reasons that we have reached this alarming statistic that it's increased 80% in women. Number one, I think women are the most stressed that they've ever been, and particularly midlife women. And we are juggling more than we've ever juggled before. We're working longer hours. We're still continuing with the lion's share of the work at home. We're going through perimenopause. We're feeling anxious and stressed. Like there's all of this pressure and expectation. Are you meditating? Are you going to the gym? Are you great in the bedroom? If you've got an amazing group of friends, do you make your home cooked meals? Like there's all of this relentless pressure on women. And
Hmm.
then you've got the industry of big alcohol going, hey, we've got this beautiful pink bottle and it's got butterflies and bubbles and rose petals and it's going to make you feel amazing. Come and just have a couple of glasses, but drink responsibly. And so
Right.
you've got alcohol coming in as going, we see you women, we know how hard it is. Come and have this drink. But no one is talking about why that is a terrible option for women in the long term. And there's no denying that alcohol works in the short term. We're not stupid. We wouldn't do it. It
Right.
numbs us, it depresses our system, it makes us not have to feel our feelings, and it helps us to switch off. But
Hmm.
long term, it plays havoc with our hormones. It causes us to have more anxiety. It raises our levels of circulating cortisol, the stress hormone. It directly impacts our sleep. And it's a level one carcinogen that directly causes seven types of cancer, and most alarmingly for women, breast cancer. And so we've got to be careful with the messaging because we wouldn't go out to women and go, here, come and smoke 10 fags. That'll make you feel better. But a
Hmm.
bottle of wine has the same cancer risk as 10 cigarettes. And yet we're happily promoting alcohol. We're buying it for our teachers, for our sports coaches. We're expecting Mother's Day gifts to be full of alcohol. And that's where my passion lies, in just changing some of that messaging.
A lot of women don't know what they don't know. We have proof, we have science, we have data, and yet people don't want to hear it. But I understand it as well because there is so much stress. There is so much pressure on women. I hear it all the time from clients. Like you said, I mean, there's a laundry list of things that we're expected to do, whether you're a mother or not. You want to look a certain way. And, then social media, while it has its benefits, it's been actually really detrimental to a lot of women because you're constantly comparing. You're seeing what everybody else has. You think that your life is not good enough or you're not doing enough. You're not producing enough. So I totally understand the pressure and the desire to numb out at times. So I really feel for women who have this reliance on alcohol. You talked a little bit about perimenopause and the shift. This is what we talk about here, right? Perimenopause, midlife health, all the changes that women are experiencing without alcohol in the picture. But when we add that, it really is adding fuel to the fire. So can you talk a little bit more about what specifically you see getting worse for women, or in terms of symptoms, what happens when somebody does tend to drink a lot?
Yeah, and I think that it's really important, going back to what you said, they've done studies now in the UK and in Australia, I'm not sure about America, that show 80% of women are unaware that there's a link between alcohol and breast cancer.
Hmm.
And those that are aware think that you have to be drinking significant amounts to be at risk. But evidence is now showing that anything more than 2 or 3 glasses of wine a week will start to increase our risk of developing any kind of cancer related to alcohol.
Mm.
And why is that important for women in midlife? Well, there's a couple of things going on there. Number one, we have shrinking livers. So our liver volume shrinks as we age. And that means that our body's ability to metabolize alcohol becomes less as we age.
Mm.
And coupled with this, there's an enzyme called ALDH, alcohol dehydrogenase. And this is the enzyme that helps the body to quickly get alcohol out of the body because alcohol is a poison to the human body. Women have less ALDH than men. So we are less effective at metabolizing alcohol. So more alcohol enters our bloodstream than a man. So women are at way higher risk of the health risks of alcohol than men because of the fact that we have this less ALDH, and ALDH declines as we age. So you've got a shrinking liver, you've got less ALDH. So your liver is having to work so hard to metabolize alcohol. So then it doesn't get the chance to do some of its other jobs, like metabolizing estrogen, which needs to
Hmm.
happen. So then you have higher circulating estrogen. So they now say that alcohol causes estrogen, increased circulating estrogen by up to 25%, which is why we then have such a link between hormone positive breast cancer and alcohol.
Hmm.
Estrogen dominance becomes really key. We start getting worse perimenopause symptoms and period pain.
Hmm.
And we also know for women that alcohol causes hot flushes. So
Yep.
if you're experiencing them anyway, they're going to get worse. And alcohol, even 1 glass of wine, will prevent you from getting really deep restorative sleep.
Mm.
And for midlife women, like that's all I want out of my
Yeah.
life is like if I can get 8 hours solid sleep, I am winning. Like
Yes.
everything in my life the next day is better. I've got more energy, my self-talk is more positive, I feel more I have more clarity. Like everything
Mhm.
in my life is better when I've had good sleep.
Yep.
And we know that alcohol prevents us from getting the essential part of the sleep cycle called REM sleep. And this is
Hmm.
the stage associated with dreaming.
Yep.
And they've done studies on people that have a 1 or 2 drinks, and we generally have 5 to 6 cycles of sleep a night, and they include light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep. And if we drink alcohol, we go into deep sleep because that's sedation,
Hmm.
and then we come into light sleep and we bypass REM sleep. And studies show that in 5 or 6 cycles, we might only get 1 cycle that includes REM sleep on a night that we've had alcohol. REM sleep is important for emotional processing. So if we're not doing emotional processing, we're going to have more negative thinking and feel lower in mood. It's also important for staving off diseases related to the brain, like Alzheimer's.
Mm.
Um, and so there's a lot of health risks, bigger picture, involved in not getting that restorative sleep that we all crave. Like, like as a midlife woman, if you're drinking alcohol, you that's going to be one of the biggest troubles that you're going to have is around sleep.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of women come to me because that's one of their biggest symptoms is they're not sleeping well. But of course, some other things that they're dealing with are anxiety, depression, and of course, weight gain. And we always ask on our intake form, how much are you drinking? And we always have this conversation face to face. And I say to them, they'll say like, "Oh, do you want me to stop drinking?" And I flat out say, "Well, I wouldn't be a very good coach if I told you to continue drinking. You're not feeling well. You just invested in a program to optimize your hormones, to make all these changes, and yet you're going to still continue to feed yourself that poison, which is really what it is. And sometimes that it's a wake up call for them, and sometimes they don't love to hear that.
Yeah.
But you can't force somebody to make that change. They have to want it. So I mean, you're obviously working with a lot of midlife women, and it sounds like you said thousands are reaching out to you. So are you feeling positive that women are making this shift, especially in midlife? Or do you feel like they get to midlife and that's where they're like, oh my gosh, I need to change my relationship with alcohol?
Yeah, I think that there's just more and more awareness. It's growing. There's sober celebrities, that are really leading the way and talking out about it. And I think that women are slowly waking up to the fact that it just isn't working like it used to. And I think that it could work in our 20s and 30s in the way we
Mhm.
want it to. And then we get
Yeah.
to our 40s and 50s and it just isn't. And so I'm never here to say you must not drink. Alcohol is the devil. Like I look back on my 20s and 30s and had some wild, crazy, wonderful nights out drinking. But there is also, when we know better, we do better.
Yes.
And I think that what bugs me the most is the lack of education and information that's out there supporting women to make informed choices about what they want to put in their body and what risks they're willing to take
Mm.
around that. And I don't preach to anyone. It's like, if you want to come and work with me, come and work with me. I'm here to help. I've helped thousands and I know the way that I work is successful and it works. But equally, if you're not ready, maybe just start off by listen to some of the podcasts I've been on, read my book, just start to be sober curious, which is a great term, of just
Yep.
considering, well, why do I drink? And
Mm.
could I take 30 days off tomorrow? And am I willing to try that experiment to see how it makes me feel? And then I've got data, because what a lot of women don't have is data in terms of being able to compare.
Mm.
This is the version of me that drinks, and this is the version of me that doesn't. And most women think that feeling 5 out of 10, waking up having not had a great sleep, feeling a bit meh, having a low level constant anxiety is just normal in
Right.
midlife. And I'm
Right.
49 years old, and I'm here to tell you it is not normal in midlife. Like I am thriving and feel probably the best I've ever felt in terms of my mental and physical health. And I'm
Yep.
in the midst of perimenopause. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's not a prescription, it's about taking control of, well, what works for me and
Yeah.
being intentional around that. But we have to start with data. So, how do I feel when I don't drink for 30 days? Give
Mm-hmm.
yourself that experiment, and then you've got information to go off.
Yeah, you're so right. We've been conditioned to think that we need to suffer and that midlife is all downhill, and it's normal to feel like crap. Also, going to doctors, and women have a lot of symptoms, and doctors are saying, well, it's just part of aging. And also, a lot of women are accepting it. And I don't love that. I want more women to try to feel better, try to do better, because there's a
Yeah,
lot of us who are, and this isn't easy. Those of us who are taking a stand in some of these topics that are hard, or who are choosing to create change, like there's a ripple effect. I really do believe that when women really give their bodies what they need, whether it's nutrients, sunshine,
totally.
movement, the right foods. We can be so powerful. We can do so much in this world. So if you're a woman who, you have passion, whether, whether it's your own business or your career, even if you're a stay-at-home mom and you're passionate about something, realize that you can do so much more. You can be so much better when your head is clear, when your body is being supported. And even though alcohol may seem fun and accepted by so many, we have proof, we have data, we have research that it is doing the opposite, especially long term. So, in terms of the women that you've worked with, and of course yourself, what are the specific benefits and changes that you've seen as a result of ditching alcohol?
Yeah, and I think it's really important to talk about that. There's physical, of course. So reversing things like estrogen dominance,
Mm.
we start to repair our liver health, our anxiety pretty much, really reduces. Our sleep starts to improve. So as a result of that, we have more energy, we have more mental clarity, we start feeling more positive. The self-talk starts to improve because if you're generally waking up, as I was, very often in the morning, and the first thought in my head was being, oh, well, you're shit, aren't you? You drank last night and said you weren't going to. What a loser. If that's how you start your day, you're not going to go out there and challenge yourself and follow your dreams and take risks and live a big life. You're going to stay small.
Right.
And you're just going to stay in your comfort zone of just feeling crap about yourself and beating yourself up all the time. Whereas when you wake up in the morning and your first thought is, ah, I had 8 hours sleep. I am absolutely on fire. These are the goals I'm going to hit today. This is my day ahead. Like you start to create a completely different life because
Yeah.
your perspective on yourself and your perspective on your life changes. So I've watched women go back to uni, change careers, take up new hobbies, leave relationships that just weren't serving them anymore. Like women
Hmm.
stay small when they're numbing themselves with alcohol because alcohol robs your confidence and it kills your soul.
Yeah.
And when you remove it, you start to open up. You have the hard conversations. You start to speak up for yourself. You stop people pleasing, like all of these things, and they don't happen overnight. It's not,
Mm.
oh, you take alcohol out for 30 days and then you have this miraculous life transformation. And it still takes work,
Yeah.
but you can't do that work when you're drinking. The
Mm.
work can only be done when you're no longer numbing yourself with alcohol.
I remember going, especially to social events where there were groups of people. I have social anxiety. I've had it for years, and I think more so because, like I said, I grew up with a parent who was an alcoholic,
Yeah,
and I knew there would be alcohol in a lot of these places, so I always just felt anxious going. But I would go for the alcohol because I was like, well, that would make me calm. That would make me feel calm. And then I started to just notice a pattern in myself, and I was like, oh my God, I don't want to be like my dad. So it was a bit of a wake up call, and I had to have a hard conversation with myself, but also think about why I was having that social anxiety and what I could do to resolve it. So when we get clear, when we really acknowledge our emotions and the why behind the choices we make, then we could address them.
exactly.
Now, with all that said, there is a lot of pressure to drink. I feel it myself still when I go to certain events. Even if it's like a business networking event, things, even if they're health and wellness people, it's like, oh, we got to have our organic wine, right? And there's a phrase that you use, which is alcohol is the only drug that we have to justify not taking. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, you say to someone you've stopped smoking and they go, well done, good on you. You say
Mhm.
you've stopped drinking and they look at you like, oh, don't be so boring.
Yeah.
Like we have this weird association with alcohol, meaning it means fun, and if you don't drink alcohol, your life's going to be boring and terrible. And like I think that removing alcohol is the catalyst to starting to reflect on many things in your life, including who you spend your time with and what you spend your time doing.
Mhm.
And, I had to do a lot of identity work because I was Sarah the party girl. So who was I if I wasn't that person anymore?
Mhm.
And I just, Mark Manson has got a brilliant saying, and he says, if you need alcohol to enjoy a person or thing, you don't actually enjoy that person or thing.
Mhm.
And it's so true. And so I will often ask myself before I go to something now, can I really be asked going if it's just going to be full of people that are there and their only intention is to get as drunk as possible? Nah. Or maybe I'll go for an hour and then I'm going to leave. But I have my own boundaries now and I know. And of course, sometimes I can feel a bit like, I've still got friends that drink, of course, and if they've gone and had one of those crazy nights out and there's pictures all over Facebook and all the rest of it, and maybe I'll feel a little bit of a pang of wanting to be involved in that. I just make sure that the next day I've got something in my diary that is going to fill my cup with connection, with doing something
Mhm.
that I love, because they're short-lived, those moments. But
Mhm.
I know that long term, my life is 100% better without alcohol. And it's a trade-off and I'm winning in that trade-off. Like I'm winning hands down in the lottery of life when it comes to living your life alcohol free versus not.
What are your thoughts on mocktails? Because there's a lot of those that are coming up everywhere. And I feel like that's very trendy now. And of course, I always like to look at the ingredients and see how much sugar is in there. But do you feel like that's also still kind of a reliance on not alcohol, obviously, but a drink?
Yeah. Look, I think they're great for grey area drinkers. I think if someone
Mm.
has physical dependency on alcohol, I think it's really triggering. But I think I've got so many of my clients who have got sober because of using alcohol-free drinks. Because
Mm.
in many cases, it was just the association of at 5 o'clock, I pour a glass of wine in a nice wine glass, and that's my me time. So if we can do that with an alcohol-free drink and
Mhm.
still have that association, then that has worked. And I find that a lot of ladies are quite reliant on them at the beginning of, oh, I need to make sure I've got my alcohol-free champagne and all of that. But in actual fact, as time goes by, like I don't drink them hardly at all ever because of the sugar, and I just don't really want them. But there's just one time for me, and it's really weird. It's airports. I have got a very strong association in my brain that when you're at an airport going on holiday, you need to have a drink. I'm from the UK. We would drink like gallons of wine at 7 o'clock in the morning before we boarded our flight. So for me, when I get to the airport, like an alcohol-free beer just completely scratches that itch for me,
Okay.
and then the association is gone. So they can be great.
What are your top tips for somebody who is sober curious, like you said, and who wants to drink less? What can they implement?
So the two things I would really recommend, the first would be get a copy of my book, Beyond Booze, How to Create a Life You Love Alcohol Free. It's written for midlife women. There's so much in there, and I get messages, hundreds of messages a week from women all over the world telling me it's completely changed their life. And so you can listen to it on Audible, it's on Kindle, you can order it off Amazon, get a copy of the book. And the second thing I would say is join my free community, the Women's Wellbeing Collective, and you'll find that in Facebook, because that is a safe first place to go to just be immersed in a place where maybe you're not surrounded by people that are changing their drinking. So it's a great safe place to be an observer where there's just lots of really beautiful, kind-hearted women really sharing the benefits that they're getting from being alcohol free, the struggles they've had, like all of that. And so the Women's Wellbeing Collective on Facebook, get a copy of Beyond Booze. And then I would say, take a break. Give yourself the opportunity to take that experiment and see how you feel without alcohol. And then you've got data. I run women's alcohol-free challenges several times a year. I have a 30-day program on my website that you can do. But give yourself that opportunity of 30 days off. And if you can't do 30 days, you probably need to. But that would, like, I couldn't, like if someone had said to me when I was drinking, you need to take 30 days off, I'd have been like, oh. No.
Right.
So just be aware of what your first response is when I say that, and that will give you a clue as well.
Yeah, thank you. Before I let you go, I want to share a quote that I read on your website that really hit me. It's this: the goal isn't to be sober. The goal is to love yourself so much that you don't need to drink. That's really
Yeah.
powerful and a really beautiful reminder. Thank you so much, Sarah, for the work you do.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, before you go, if you're resonating with this podcast and realize that your symptoms are anything but normal, my comprehensive program, the Perimenopause Method, may be a great fit for you. My team and I help women in their mid-30s to early 50s improve symptoms such as fatigue, disrupted sleep, anxiety, erratic moods, bloating, and much more. We do this by utilizing advanced testing, a personalized plan tailored to you, women's health and hormones education, and ongoing support so you never feel alone and you get results. If you're ready to commit to your health and feel like yourself again, but even better, check out the link in the show notes to learn more about the Perimenopause Method. The information provided is for educational and informational purposes only. I am not, nor do I act as a doctor or any other medical professional. I am not providing healthcare, medical services, or attempting to diagnose, treat, prevent, or cure any physical, mental, or emotional disease or condition. The information shared is not intended to be a substitute for the professional medical advice provided by your own medical or mental health provider.